together, and we're taking 5 or 6 capillaries and forming a common channel. That is identified as a venule, but specifically a post-capillary venule. There are no pre-capillary venules. So we're distinguishing a post-capillary venule from larger venules closer to the heart. Post-capillary venules are just like capillaries in appearance. They're just larger in size. So a post-capillary venule is going to be more like a sinusoid, but because of its relationship distal to the capillary bed, we don't call it a sinusoid. So this could be 12 to 15 microns in diameter. The key element here is still the continuation of a lack of smooth muscle and a decrease in the number of tight junctions. Post-capillary venules are leaky. There's actually gaps that can occur, especially in the presence of histamine and some of the chemicals released by macrophages when pathogens occur. And white blood cells attracted to that area of infection will leave the post-capillary venule through this method. Anybody remember what this is called? When white blood cells change shape, kind of squeeze out of a blood vessel. You learned it in Bio430 with the chapter on skin, specifically inflammation and wound healing. Diapedesis.
Oh, yeah.
That sounded really heartfelt. So diapedesis is the process by which white blood cells change from their round shape to be able to squeeze through an opening in post-capillary venules. And this happens whenever you have an infection or an inflammation. White blood cells travel in the blood, but they do their work in the connective tissue. And this is how they get to the connective tissue. So I want you to recognize that post-capillary venules are where that takes place. So now as our venules join together and form larger venules, we're looking at the structure of veins. So we start adding back a little bit smooth muscle and a little bit of connective tissue. We kind of go in reverse. So I'm not going to put the rest of the venules, I'm just going to put veins up here. Whoops. I'm erasing stuff I don't need to erase. So they will also have a tunica intima made up of smooth muscle, made up of simple squamous epithelium. So we're talking about our regular venules and veins. So to identify a vein, again, versus an artery, you're going to look at the proportion of smooth muscle in the tunica media to the diameter of the vessel wall. So there is smooth muscle, are smooth muscle fibers in veins. They are oriented as a loose spiral. So what I mean by that, using the materials I have at hand here, let's say that this tape is smooth muscle. There's a lot of it. In an artery, the series of smooth muscle cells are wrapped individually around the smooth muscle in a concentric relationship. All right? It'll take several to do that. In a vein, the smooth muscle cells have a more loose spiral. So they they would be more like this. Right? Therefore, when they contract, the same amount of contraction isn't going to decrease the diameter of the vessel to the same degree because it's spread out more. Right? So that's what I mean by a spiral. The arrangement is a looser spiral. But there's still smooth vessel present, just not as extensive and in a different arrangement. So for this diameter of a vein, we would have smooth muscle about like that, whereas if it was an artery, it would be approximately this thick. Okay. The tunica externa gets, by the time we were down in our arterioles, it was almost a loose irregular, and now it's going to be getting thicker. Just a gradual change. In our capillaries, all we had was loose from the tunica intima. So again, the bigger the vessel, the more dense that tunica externa is going to be. And then finally, when we get to the very large veins, i.e. the inferior vena cavas, we actually have smooth muscle cells out in the inferior vena cava. The tunica externa of the inferior vena cava is going to have scattered smooth muscle cells in its tunica externa. In fact, the wall of these vessels could be so large that they have their own blood supply. It's too thick for diffusion to supply the outer walls. So when you look in here, you'll see small arterioles and capillaries, known as the vasa vasorum. Both are large veins and arteries, and this just means vessels of the vessel.
What is that?
Those are blood vessels supplying the thicker outer wall of our large arteries and veins. I have a friend at Sac State, one of the faculty members there, she calls them vasa vasorum instead of vasa vasorum. But it's just, these walls are so thick that we have additional blood vessels extending from the tunica intima out into the outer wall. Now, even though pressure is lower in the veins than it is in the arteries, we still have a gravitational force that's working against those low pressures and drawing the blood back down towards the heart. And so we have the presence in the veins, go back up here, of valves. So these look very similar to the semilunar valve in the heart. You could find the valves that you have in your body. There's two types of veins. We have superficial veins just under the skin, and then we have deep veins that travel with arteries that are protected by the muscle layers. And so if you let blood flow down into your, where you can see vessels on your hand or your forearm, and then you pinch it, push down on it to keep the blood from flowing in, and milk it up to your heart, you can see how far you can milk it where blood flow cannot, or how close together you can milk it before a valve interferes, and it won't refill because it's reached a valve and it can't flow back any farther than that. When I'm bored in meetings, I isolate my valve.
Make sure they're working.
Now this is showing a deep vein, so say along the back of the leg, and when muscles contract, they get fatter, so all you have to do is clench your jaw and you can feel your masseter get bigger. So when that happens, it squeezes the valve, or it squeezes the veins. That functions as a second pump. Skeletal muscles act as a second pump, helping to move blood towards the heart. Obviously, it's going to move it in both directions. It's like taking a tube of toothpaste and cutting off the bottom end and squeezing it. It's going to go both ways. All right? So the valve prevents it from going too far in the opposite direction and redirect the flow back up. Some people are born with weaker valves and vessel walls. All right? And there are those of us like me that do stupid things and weaken their valves. And so when the valves are stretched out and the vessel wall is dilated, that leads to the condition of varicose veins. So they've dilated, the valves are no longer closed. This can be a painful condition typically to remove or collapse. Varicose veins is considered to be cosmetic surgery. So I'm still waiting to get that done, but yes.
What did you say causes that?
It can be a congenital weakness where pressure, standing a long time like I do, or someone who sits a long time and compresses the veins at the back of their thighs, the blood returning from the legs backs up. Or, you know, so it could be done caused by your job, or if you already have born with weaker vessels. There's things that you can do, herbs and stuff that you can take supplements that strengthen them. I read that pansy flowers, they're edible like nasturtiums and stuff, put in salads, will increase the collagen and elastic tissue of veins. I just don't know how many cups of pansy flowers you have to eat every day. But anyway, Desiree told me from my morning lab that she was going to give me some information because she takes some stuff for her heart valves. But when my oldest son was born, I told you every spring I start to exercise and everything, and so I put him in a stroller and go for a run. And my husband was riding bikes, and he had bought a pair of bicycle pants with the pads and the lycra stretch and stuff, and they were too small. He was going to mail them to a friend. I said, no, don't do that. I'll wear them when I go running. He gave me a nice little booty and, feel good because they're stretchy. And so I was wearing them for a couple of months. And one day I got out of the shower and we had this full-length mirror on the closet doors. And I had this dark blue line extending from the back of my knee up to about here. And I was just, what? Where did that come from? And I could actually feel the valves. I could feel little bumps there. And I couldn't figure out why all of a sudden that appeared until I was pulling on the shorts, and it started or stopped right at the edge of the shorts. So those tight lycra shorts, as I was exercising, I was moving blood flow back to my heart. They got to that bind, like having an elastic wrap around my leg, and they couldn't go any farther. So the blood started backing up. Obviously in the deep veins it was going, but in the superficial veins, started backing up and distending and separating the valves. So one of these days, it's a cosmetic thing. My girlfriend, I don't know what kind of insurance she has, but 2 years ago, she had some spider veins and varicose veins, not really bad, just showing some blue in her skin, and it started to hurt over her ankle. Unfortunately, mine doesn't hurt. I suppose I could say it does, but it doesn't. And so she went to see her physician. He referred her to a vein specialist, and he said, I'll take that out. He said, I'll just go ahead and take all of them out and bill your insurance. I can't do that. The same insurance paid for her to leave last month. I had called her to take her out for her birthday, and she said, well, I won't be here because I'm going away for to learn how to eat better and lose weight and stuff for 10 days in the Napa Valley. $3,000, which I thought was a great deal for 10 days of living in Napa and having your food prepared for you and taking exercise classes and nutrition classes and stuff. And her insurance paid for it. But you and I do not have the same insurance. But anyway, this is a view of severe varicose veins. I've seen them worse than that. And there's people who can be 85 and don't have a single one. And you can see vessels like this in people in their 20s and 30s.
Are spider veins the ones that are just like...
Spider veins are like a little thin lines that kind of radiate out.
But they don't bulge out.
They don't bulge out like that. Yeah, they're more like almost broken capillaries under the skin, except they're
But is it like the same?
similar process? Yes, they're just smaller. I don't know what caused why and over her ankle, and I don't know what would make it painful. I would make it painful, but that would cause insurance to work. But yeah, she had it, I don't know why, she had it done a week before, 3 days before Thanksgiving, and had 10 people over to her house as company spending the day and the week. And she had her legs wrapped in 8 bandages, and every 15 minutes she had to go lie down. Standing up, of course, would put pressure on it. All right, so those are the structures of the veins. Let's take a break, all right, and come back.